Well, it's an interesting thing. Like Warren Buffett, he has a quote that says the best way to teach your kids about taxes is to eat 30% of their ice cream. And I personally find that pretty hilarious, especially in this house, because we're so like everybody wants to have their part of the ice cream. Nobody wants to share. And as a kid, can you imagine if you took a chunk of their ice cream, they would think you're crazy.
Mm-hmm. This is BetterWealth with Caleb Guilliams. Hey everyone, welcome to BetterWealth Breakdown, where we break down concepts, ideas, and quotes from around the world. And this episode is going to be quite interesting because we're talking about teaching your kids about taxes, which is really, when you hear that, it's like, why would I want to teach my kids about taxes?
Well, it's an interesting thing. Like Warren Buffett, he has a quote that says the best way to teach your kids about taxes is to eat 30% of their ice cream. And I personally find that pretty hilarious, especially in this house, because we're so like everybody wants to have their part of the ice cream. Nobody wants to share. And as a kid, can you imagine if you took a chunk of their ice cream, they would think you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And but really, when it comes down to the money piece in general, for me personally, my story comes from just the idea of saving at an early age. And my parents set up for me a like kids checking account. I think it was like First National Bank, which was bought by U.S. Bank, and I just remember always, anytime I got money, any sort of money, whether it was birthday, Christmas, whatever, or doing any form of work, the first thought was to save it. And what was really powerful was I actually got some form of interest. Now we know it was like nothing essentially, yeah. But when
you remember what interest rate it was,
I actually think it was over 1%.
Wow.
Because I also had some CDs set up.
Yep.
And so, but then to see that that money actually gets taxed as well, it's like what the heck? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, but let's be honest, 1%, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, yes, I get your point.
But
yeah.
it goes back to as a kid when you're saving, let's just say $20.
Yeah.
And you see a little bit of growth to that, and you become disciplined of like I never thought to spend money.
Right.
It was always like the mindset of saving, and I know. You I think you've said this story before, but this idea of blessing beans in your family was really powerful too.
Yeah, I have a couple stories growing up. The first story is one of my first businesses that I don't actually talk a lot about because it doesn't make as good of a story as chickens, is I had Caleb's Kitchen. Kitchen was spelled C, by the way, purposefully. Trust me, that was a whole debate back in the day. And I baked 4 to 8 loaves of bread when we went to the co-op, and I started that business because in our homeschool co-op group, we had like this entrepreneurial, class. And what was really interesting is like all these kids were like, I mean, one of my friends did like, he was going to go pick up bottles from the side of the road. And I'm secretly like, I will destroy all of you guys. So plain and simple, I was the only profitable business at the end of the class. I was selling bread. And the cool thing was that whole exercise, and I'm sharing this story because if you have kids at home, this is just a really good way to help kids understand about money. And regardless, I'm really grateful for my parents that they did this. And so essentially my mom I think she lost money on the deal, but she would say, okay, a loaf of bread would cost $3. I'm making up numbers, and I think I sold it for $8. So I made like $5 on a loaf of bread, and then I would obviously pay my mom for the supplies. And so it was a good gig. And then at the end of the year, our teacher was like, okay, so we had to keep track of all of our profits and expenses and all that stuff. And then we had a pizza party at the end, and it was paid by taxes. And I was the only profitable person in the class. And so I remember being livid. I was so mad because I actually had to pay money for this pizza. And again, I think in hindsight, like if I remember, the teacher did pitch in some money, but I remember that example being like, I think this is so unfair because I was the only person that took this thing seriously. I worked harder than the average person. I made money, and I ended up paying for their pizza. So maybe that's why I have some of the conservative views that I do.
Do you think that was part of the reason why you have the views that you do now?
I mean, parenting, homeschooling, upbringing probably has a lot to do with that. But anyways, that's an example. Another example is blessing beans. I had an episode that I did on this, and essentially my parents had just like this metric system where if you did something really great, they would reward you with blessing bean. Then they had like a metric of like what those beans could be worth. Like you have 25 beans, you could go on a date with mom or dad, and if I forget the metrics and like what it could purchase you. And I just remember being like such a saver that I never spent any, and then I realized that the rules can change, and they just took the blessing beans away one day, and I got the short end of the stick on that one as well. So anyways, the moral of the story is, yes, I remember those times, but as a kid, my parents, just like yours, even the little things like making us pay for car insurance, making us pay for cell phone, like as a parent, you might feel bad or you might want to help your kids, but you might be helping your kids more by helping them pay for them, or not helping them pay for their car or whatever, but like having them pay for it. Because when they're under the safety net of not truly being able to fail, but you teach them the value of money, and even teach them like the value of paying taxes, I think it's really valuable.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. Is just that early discipline
Yep.
of whether it's early savings and there's so many different ways that you can build that in, of giving some form of interest to see the power of interest, but then also the power of taxation on the other side too, because it's fun to see money grow and it's not fun to see it being taken away. So overarchingly, like in what we're trying to do here in our big belief in generational wealth, is it really starts with your kids and instilling some of these foundational principles, and you can really see that power of that compound interest of knowledge as time goes on, and seeing your kids grow and really be far ahead of their peers when it comes to money.
And this is why you need to teach your kids on how to pay taxes. Maybe next time you go out to dinner, your kids can pay for their portion or pay for the whole family as part of a rent, as it relates to living in the house. And again, I appreciate you coming up with this topic. If you're listening and you have questions about kids and money, questions about anything in money, we are trying to be relevant. We're trying to do short episodes that are punchy, that help you really get these concepts that can help you enhance your life. And so to that, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for following our journey, and stay tuned for tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening to the BetterWealth podcast. It would mean the world to me if you could hit subscribe, leave a review, and share this with the people that you know and love.